Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my 2024 library tour. In this episode, I am going to be doing the first of two shelves of the bookcase that this bookcase right here is on top of. The top shelf of the bookcase, which is here, is not big enough for any books, so I have my old computer and my tablet stored there. Let's get going with the books. First is Explorers of the Nile, The Triumph and Tragedy of a Great Victorian Adventure by Tim Gill. I think I picked this up around the same time, probably a little bit after I picked up River of the Gods. Or in response to a booktube event about nonfiction adventure writing or something. I have not gotten around to this book yet, and hopefully I will soon. Next is Culture in the Third Reich by Moritz Vollmer, translated from the German by Jeremy Noakes and Leslie Sharp. So this is an exploration of how the Nazis took over cultural production, film, literature, radio, the performing arts, and how ordinary Germans interacted with this Nazi-approved art and culture, either favorably or disfavorably. And so a number of ordinary Germans, diary entries, letters, commentary are included in the book. It is harrowing, but also quite good. I really enjoyed it, despite the harrowing subject matter. Next is another book I have not read yet, Victoria's Century, The United Kingdom, 1800 to 1906 by David Kennedy. So this is a history of the United Kingdom for a little more than a century. So mostly Queen Victoria's reign, but some of British history before and a smidge after. Have not gotten around to this one yet. But I think I've heard good things about this. Next is a book that is, I wouldn't say it's contentious with me, but I'm not super sold on it. I like it, but I don't love it, and that is A Distant Mirror, The Calamitous 14th Century by Barbara W. Tuchman. So this is a history of mostly France and England during the later 14th century. It follows the life of a French nobleman named Enguerrand de Courcy VII, who was the lord of a fief just to the north of Paris that was quite large, worthy of a higher title than just lord. But the family never took on a count or a duke or a marquess or a higher title of nobility. Enguerrand managed to get into the good graces of King Edward III and become his son-in-law by marrying his oldest daughter. And so Enguerrand was granted lands in Britain or in England as well. So he then had divided loyalties. And so the focus of this book is Enguerrand's journey through the 14th century. The book, I struggled with the book initially. I did bail on it when I first tried it several years ago, and then bail redeemed it last year with Steve Donohue's book club STD. And I liked it quite a bit, although there are some parts of the book that kind of bug me, particularly um, how Tuckman describes family relations in the medieval period, which I'm not entirely sure is how it was. Moving on to another book that is somewhat contentious with me, and that is Magic, a History, From Alchemy to Witchcraft, From the Ice Age to the Present by Chris Gossenden. So this is a history of magic from the Paleolithic to the present, um, divided on a global perspective or breakdown. So there is some woo-woo in how Gosden presents this material. And while some chapters are really good, particularly prehistory and the Eurasian steppe peoples, and I would also say Europe, um, the chapters on China and Africa, the Americas, are certainly lacking. Um, so yeah, so I picked this up because if you've been following along with my channel for any length of time, and uh, you will know that I have an interest in writing fantasy, and so I'm interested in real world magic systems and how to incorporate that or draw inspiration from real world magic systems into fantasy world systems, which tend to be a bit more mechanistic lately. Um, Next is Britain at Bay, the epic story of the Second World War, 1938 to 1941, by Alan Allport. So this is a history of the Second World War in which Britain is on the defensive. Have not gotten around to it yet. Nor have I gotten around to Visions of Empire, How Five Imperial Regimes Shaped the World, by Krishnan Kumar. I have a picture of the Habsburgs on the cover. You can tell by the prominence of their chins. Next is Our First Civil War, Patriots and Loyalists in the American Revolution by H.W. Brands. So this is a history of the American Revolution that looks at it from the perspective of the conflict between the Patriots, the American colonists who wanted to separate from Britain, and the Loyalists, those colonists who wished to remain part of the British Empire. I had a go at this book 2 years ago and didn't get on with it. It just, I think Brand's style the last few years has really, I think, transitioned more to a popular history or more popular historian than a more academic one, and it just doesn't quite connect to me. I think is the best way I can describe it. Although it could also be the subject matter, because the American War of Independence is one of those historical events for which I have mixed feelings for, that I find it hard to read histories of, because there was another, the first volume of Rick Atkinson's trilogy. I read and had similar issues with. And also during reading the George III biography, the chapters on the American War of Independence also bugged me. So it could just be the subject matter. because I haven't really kept up with a lot of Burns' most recent work outside of Dreams of El Dorado. Next is a book that is not nearly so contentious with me. In fact, I quite enjoy it. It is American Comics: A History by Jeremy Dauber. So this is a history of American comics, starting with um, the comic strips and focusing primarily on comic books. Not only the superhero comic books that um, Steve Donahue and Michael K. Vaughan talk about a lot on their channel, but also indie comics, the comics that were quite popular in the 50s and 60s before they were forced to shut down, as well as comics from around the world like manga and French and British comics. So this is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Next is a book that I have not read in over 20 years. The Punic Wars by Adrian Goldsworthy. So this is a history of the three Punic Wars. And I remember it quite fondly. Um, Although perhaps that is not saying much given how often me saying, I remember something fondly of what I've read decades ago and coming back to it, I do not experience it fondly. I also have Carthage Must Be Destroyed, The Rise and Fall of an Ancient Civilization by Richard Miles. So this is a book dedicated more to Carthage itself, although I have not read it yet. I have read America Bewitched, The Story of Witchcraft After Salem by Owen Davies, who is a historian of magic and sorcery. So this book looks at various forms of witchcraft in the United States, primarily European derived folk beliefs, not just in Salem, but in the other colonial areas and going through to sort of popular representations of witchcraft. So it's interesting. And again, I picked this up largely because of my interest in drawing inspiration from real life magic systems, keeping in mind that they are not actually effective for fantasy world building. And sorry about the text if you're hearing the occasional text message ring. I got a package in. So one of them was probably Best Buy, and I might also be getting some text bombs from my sister-in-law. Anyway, let's move on because there are only 4 books left on this shelf. Next is Hadrian, the Restless Emperor by Anthony R. Burley. So biography of the Emperor Hadrian. Have not gotten to this one yet. I have gotten to the final 3 books on this shelf. First up is Emperor of Rome by Mary Beard. This came out just this year and is an exploration of what it means to be Emperor of Rome. So Beard focuses on the Roman emperors from Augustus through to Alexander Severus, who succeeded Heliogabalus, even though for all practical purposes it's Augustus to Heliogabalus. And so instead of a group biography of all of these emperors, it's a sort of exploration of how did one become emperor of Rome? What were the emperor's responsibilities? What was his family life like? How did he travel? What did he do while traveling? How was he sort of seen in the military? Those sorts of things. The book is quite good. I have some quibbles with it, um, but on the whole, it is quite good. Next is The Last Medieval Queens by J.L. Lanesmith. So this is an academic study of four medieval queens: Margaret of Anjou, Elizabeth Woodville, and Neville, and either Catherine of Valois or Elizabeth of York. And it looks at how these queens, like what their political roles were, their social and cultural roles, um, their dynastic roles, um, how they earned money, um, how they were interacted with their neighbors, that sort of thing. And it's fascinating, although it has been quite some time since I read it. And finally, the last book on the shelf, The Middle Kingdoms by Martin Ridey. So this is the history of Central Europe, which is Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Croatia, Slovenia, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, from the Roman Empire through to the present. Um, it's okay, although I found myself growing tired of it as the book went on. So that concludes that shelf. I will be back tomorrow with the final shelf of this stacked up bookcase. So until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.